What if I told you that America, yes, the land of the free, once stood on the brink of dictatorship? Not in some distant future or dystopian novel, but in the very real year of 1933. The Great Depression had shattered the economy. Bread lines stretched across cities. Banks collapsed. People were desperate. And in that chaos, a group of the wealthiest and most powerful men in America began to whisper. What if democracy no longer served their interests? What if one-man President Franklin D. Roosevelt was threatening everything they had built? And what if the solution was a coup? Not bullets in the streets, not mobs in the Capitol, but a carefully orchestrated overthrow from within, led not by extremists, but by the elite, bankers, weapons manufacturers, and even former presidential allies. Their plan? Install a decorated war hero as a puppet dictator, loyal only to them. A man the people would trust while they pulled the strings behind the curtain. And the most shocking part? It almost worked. The only reason this coup didn't succeed is because of one man who dared to expose it. Major General Smedley Butler, one of the most decorated Marines in U.S. history. But here's the catch. Even after he testified before Congress, even after confirming the plot's credibility, no one was arrested, no one went to trial, and the story was buried. You won't find this in most history textbooks. You weren't meant to. This isn't conspiracy theory. This is documented fact. This is the business plot of 1933 America's forgotten coup attempt. Tonight on Tales Beyond Time, we pull back the curtain on one of the most chilling and deliberately forgotten events in U.S. history. Because history doesn't whisper, it warns. In 1933, America was on its knees. The Great Depression had gutted the economy. Over 15 million were unemployed. Dust storms ravaged farmland. Entire families, starved while the stock market's collapse, echoed in every corner of the country. Confidence in the system had all but vanished. Then came Franklin Delano Roosevelt, a new president with bold ideas. He called it the New Deal, a sweeping vision to rescue the nation by empowering workers, taxing the rich, and placing government at the heart of recovery. To millions of ordinary Americans, Roosevelt was a lifeline, a leader who spoke of hope, unity, and fairness. But not everyone saw him that way. In the gilded halls of New York's financial district, behind the polished doors of private clubs and corporate boardrooms, whispers turned into fury. The elite, the titans of industry, banking, and arms manufacturing, saw Roosevelt not as a savior, but a threat. He wanted to regulate Wall Street. He wanted to break monopolies. He wanted to redistribute power from the rich to the people. To those who had long enjoyed unchecked influence over American life, this wasn't policy, it was betrayal, a class betrayal. And in their minds, one unspoken truth became louder. If democracy dared to interfere with their wealth, then democracy had to go. These weren't fringe radicals. These were men who controlled fortunes, swayed elections, and shaped public opinion with a phone call. And they were no longer content to wait for the next election. They began asking a dangerous question. What if Roosevelt couldn't be stopped by votes or politics? What if he had to be removed altogether quietly, efficiently, and permanently? Thus, the seeds of a silent American coup were planted, not by rebels, but by the enemy within. In smoky boardrooms and elite gentlemen's clubs, the whispers grew louder. America's economy was collapsing, and Roosevelt's New Deal threatened to shatter the old order. The men who had built their fortunes unchecked bankers, industrialists, and war profiteers saw the writing on the wall. Government regulation, higher taxes, empowered labor unions. They weren't about to stand by and watch their empires be dismantled, but they didn't want revolution. They wanted restoration of the old power, the old money, the old control. Inspired by Europe's rising fascist regimes, Mussolini in Italy, Hitler in Germany, these American elites began to see a model that could work at home. In both countries, capitalism had aligned with dictatorship to crush labor movements, suppress dissent, and preserve the wealth of the ruling class. If it worked there, why not here? Their plan was meticulous, quiet, and terrifying. They envisioned a shadow government. Roosevelt would remain a figurehead, but real power would lie in the hands of a military strongman, chosen and controlled by them. A puppet president with patriotic appeal, veteran loyalty, and working-class trust. No tanks rolling through Washington. No civil war. Just a bloodless coup, disguised as a national rescue. They began preparing logistics, funding, recruitment, command structure. Veterans would be their army. Wall Street would be their bank. Corporate media would be their shield. But one question remained. Who would lead it? They needed someone respected by soldiers, admired by citizens, but not a career politician, someone the public would follow without question. There was one name passed quietly from hand to hand. One man who checked every box. Major General Smedley Darlington Butler, a Marine legend, a national hero. And they believed. The perfect pawn. Major General Smedley Butler was not your typical military man. He wasn't born into privilege, and he didn't play politics. He earned his stripes the hard way through grit, fire, and unwavering loyalty to the U.S. Marines. Decorated with 2 Medals of Honor, Butler had fought in jungles, deserts, and cities across the globe, from Haiti to China, from Nicaragua to the trenches of World War I. To the American people, he was a warrior turned champion of the common man. To the plotters, he was the key to everything. Butler had what they lacked, the trust of over 500,000 veterans. These men, scarred by war and struggling through the Great Depression, worshipped him. If Butler called, they would march. The conspirators believed he could rally these veterans into a paramilitary force. He could deliver the public's confidence. He could legitimize the coup without firing a single shot. But they underestimated him. Major General Smedley Butler may have worn a uniform, but he didn't serve moneyed interests. In fact, by the 1930s, he had become deeply critical of the very wars he once fought, in denouncing them as corporate imperialism. His fiery speeches exposed how you soldiers had often been used to protect big business, not democracy. So when a mysterious representative, Gerald C. McGuire, approached him with offers of power, glory, and command of a secret army, Butler listened. But with rising suspicion, he played along, probing deeper, collecting names, documents, and details. And when he was sure, he blew the whistle. Instead of becoming their puppet, Butler turned spy for the people. What he revealed would shake the foundations of American democracy. But would anyone believe him? Would the truth ever reach the public? Or would the plotters bury it before it ever saw the light of day? Smedley Butler had a choice: a life of ease under the command of a shadow regime, or a plunge into the treacherous unknown by standing against it. He chose truth. Instead of seizing power, Butler risked everything: his reputation, his safety, even his legacy. He could have taken the deal. They offered him leadership over 500,000 battle-hardened veterans, millions in financial backing, and the chance to control America behind the curtain. But what they didn't realize was Butler wasn't a man for sale. In 1934, he did the unthinkable. He went public. With explosive testimony before the McCormack-Dickstein Congressional Committee, Butler revealed the outlines of the coup. Wall Street moguls and elite industrialists, men with ties to J.P. Morgan, DuPont, and General Motors. Men with ties to J.P. Morgan, DuPont, and General Motors had tried to enlist him in overthrowing President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Their goal? Crush the New Deal, stop the rise of the working class, replace the president with a controllable figurehead, with Butler pulling the strings. Butler didn't just testify, he named names. And Washington trembled. The media, caught off guard? Some outlets dismissed it as fantasy. Others ran headlines screaming, "Plot to seize government." Public opinion split. Was this America's greatest patriot, or a mad general with a wild imagination? Behind closed doors, though, Congress took it seriously. They investigated quietly, but no one was arrested. No indictments, no trials. Why? Was the conspiracy buried to protect the elite? Or was the truth too dangerous for the public to handle? Butler had done his duty. He had sounded the alarm. But instead of parades, he faced mockery, silence, and denial. Still, he never regretted his stand, because he believed something more important than comfort, wealth, or fame. Democracy must be defended, even from the inside. The chamber was too quiet, as Major General Smedley Butler stepped forward to testify. A highly decorated Marine, twice awarded the Medal of Honor, Butler wasn't a man given to exaggeration. So when he leaned into the microphone before the McCormick-Dickstein Committee in late 1934, Washington held its breath. What followed sent shockwaves through the Capitol. Butler laid out a stunning accusation. A group of powerful Wall Street financiers and industrialists had approached him with a plan to overthrow President Franklin D. Roosevelt. Their intention? To install a fascist-style regime under the guise of saving the country from Roosevelt's dangerous New Deal. They promised Butler $3 million in immediate funding, command of 500,000 veterans, and the title of Secretary of General Affairs, a euphemism for military dictator. He named names, high-ranking bankers, leaders tied to J.P. Morgan, DuPont, and even major media outlets. These were not fringe extremists. They were the very men shaping America's economy from behind their boardroom walls. Congressmen were stunned. Was it a joke? A test? Or had the United States just come inches from its first modern coup d'etat? The committee launched a quiet investigation, and though their final report confirmed many of Butler's claims, it stopped short of prosecution. No arrests, no trials. The accused simply vanished from the headlines. And so, a plot of staggering ambition to remake American democracy was quietly buried. Why? Was it political fear? Protection of the elite? Or a deep discomfort with what Butler's testimony revealed about the fragility of American institutions? Butler had opened the door to a truth no one wanted to confront. That democracy's greatest threat wasn't always foreign. Sometimes it wore a suit and spoke perfect English. The silence that followed General Butler's explosive testimony was deafening. After months of public anticipation and media murmurs, the McCormick-Dickstein Committee finally released its report in early 1935. It validated Butler's claims, confirming that there had indeed been a conspiracy to form a fascist veterans army. But then, like a magician's sleight of hand, the truth was made to disappear. No perpetrators were arrested. No grand jury indictments. No public trials. Names like Gerald McGuire, Grayson M.P. Murphy, and powerful industrialists tied to DuPont, J.P. Morgan, and major media outlets were quietly scrubbed from public attention. Newspapers shifted focus. The government refused to release critical documents. The few headlines that did appear were vague, often casting Butler as eccentric, perhaps even delusional. Why? Some argue the truth was too dangerous. Prosecuting some of America's most powerful men would have meant unraveling the country's financial core, just as it was recovering from the Great Depression. Others believe it was deliberate suppression. The Roosevelt administration, wary of igniting panic, may have opted for containment over confrontation. A public scandal of that magnitude might have shattered faith in democracy itself. Then there's the media's role. Many of the alleged conspirators owned or influenced newspapers. Stories were spiked. Editorial lines were blurred. The press, which should have investigated relentlessly, instead became part of the vanishing act. In the end, the American people were left with no closure. Just rumors, fragments, and the whispered sense that something had almost happened and was quickly buried. What else was hidden behind closed doors? How close did America truly come to dictatorship? And most chilling of all, if they got away with it once, who's to say they wouldn't try again? Why would a plot so audacious a conspiracy to overthrow the U.S. government fade almost completely from public memory? It wasn't just forgotten. It was erased. The key players had everything to lose if the truth endured. The alleged conspirators were the pillars of American industry and finance men whose names built skyscrapers, ran railroads, and funded political campaigns. They sat atop a system that feared exposure more than revolution. Admitting guilt would mean destroying the illusion that capitalism and democracy always worked hand in hand. So they buried it. The McCormick-Dickstein Committee quietly shelved damning details. Witnesses were left unchallenged. The press, many owned or influenced by those implicated, downplayed or ignored the findings. Journalists who tried to dig deeper hit brick walls or were discredited. General Butler, once hailed as a hero, became a footnote. Some called him paranoid. Others implied he'd misinterpreted the events. But few dared accuse him outright, because deep down, they knew he was telling the truth. Even Roosevelt, the president they aimed to overthrow, chose silence. Some say he used the plot to gain leverage over the business elite, forcing them into New Deal compromises. Others believe he feared what public outrage might spark in an already volatile nation. Then came World War II. America needed unity. The sins of the past were swept aside for the sake of national survival. The business plot disappeared under the weight of more urgent headlines. But the silence speaks volumes. What does it say about a society where power can erase the truth? Where the elite can walk free after scheming treason? The business plot didn't vanish by accident. It was buried on purpose, and its ghost still lingers, whispering caution to every generation that dares to believe history always plays fair. The business plot may have failed, but its legacy haunts American democracy to this day, not with gunfire or tanks, but with silence. The real danger wasn't just the attempted coup, it was the collective decision to forget. By sweeping the conspiracy under the rug, America sent a chilling message. Some truths are too dangerous to confront. Decades passed, and the story faded into obscurity. History textbooks never mentioned it. Schools never taught it. Generations of Americans grew up unaware that in 1933, powerful men sought to dismantle the Republic. The plot was a phantom footnote, barely surviving in fringe discussions and forgotten government archives. But silence does not erase impact. The business plot revealed a terrifying truth. The fragility of democracy, even in the land that prides itself as its greatest defender. It showed how unchecked wealth and influence could conspire behind closed doors, all while smiling for the public and waving the flag. This silence also emboldened future conspirators. If one plot could vanish so easily, how many others followed, more subtle, more calculated, hidden beneath polished speeches and patriotic slogans? The legacy of silence is a warning. It reminds us that power protects itself, that whistleblowers like General Butler can be celebrated briefly, then discarded, that even when treason is exposed, justice might never follow, and that forgetting history makes us easy prey for its repetition. In a time when misinformation spreads like wildfire, when truth battles perception daily, the forgotten coup of 1933 is more than a historical curiosity. It's a mirror reflecting how fragile freedom can be when truth is silenced. So ask yourself, if it could happen once, could it happen again? What if America came within inches of dictatorship and we never truly reckoned with it? The business plot wasn't just a footnote, it was a flashing red warning. A reminder that power, left unchecked, can turn against the very system it thrives in. And the silence that followed? It wasn't accidental, it was orchestrated. But now, you've walked through secret meetings, shadowy alliances, and a general's brave defiance. Now the question is, what will you do with this knowledge? History repeats itself, but only when we allow it to be forgotten. If this story gripped you, shook you, or made you question everything you thought you knew, hit that subscribe button. Leave a comment. Do you believe the business plot was truly buried, or just the tip of the iceberg? And remember, every untold truth is a time bomb. Let's diffuse them together, one story at a time.